Hello all. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, all. Good evening. I'm Gwen Robinson, past president of the Foreign Correspondents Club of Thailand and editor-at-large of Nucc Asia. We're starting this program miraculously nearly on time tonight. That's partly because we are in also to mark the February 1st date of 1 year since Myanmar's coup. We're also going to show a short film before we kick off the panel discussion by AAPP, the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners Burma, which many of you may know has become an outstanding documenter of casualties, including deaths and detentions, as well as arrest warrants since February the 1st. They've put together a short film of 6 minutes, so we'd like to start with that and then move into the panel discussion. So we've got all our panelists on standby and we'll come to the stage after that. So I'll just hand over to our technical maestro, Julian, to start the film. Over to you, Julian.
Mingalaba, Natana Yakapwaya Lago, Mematamamu Shide Subi, Se Osuha, Makailo de Jampia Chene, Nanganoya Tocha Anago, Matialu Duakeda, Dine Soye, Tenititi Kitwa Pipare. Analumu Tanita doing Tanki Ye Chini Reha, Sezuni de Zuzamaka, so you Piasito Kayabi Pibime, a jumper se Sugaro, you must handle Loya Dune, Pidulu True Boma, Pimpin to Tan and Jenny Zebabe, Matia Analu you move now, the Bat Dreamabe, Diloya Abo, Sanchez Hanapia Muri, Yamananga and Piama, the Shane to Trapola Kedalo. The Sedemabe, Se Osuye, Matia Pansi Mudui, a jumper Puke Murigale, set I people in Keraga. Nanga Yates in the Yakuni South Yete, AAPP Matamia Aya, Anna Dingani Sabi, Nasaya Dalana Town Senati, Matia Pansi Kankayadu, Susu Bao, the downtown Chaoyanga said Ushike Bare, Eddie Chema, Amudami, Natal Doyan Sena U, Kale Dunge, Naya Chow Sena Une. Alushi do go mamilo, the Zaka and Pip Pansi Kan Yadu, don't have to bow bare. Da being the media the Marigo, Pansi Town Chachin, Nation Yaman Chindogo, so you are Julon Yashia, did the Nita doing the media nebe Titiga, Boko dea don't say go, Matia Pansi Kankea bare. Sanapia word is starting now, Ninjas or Sanapia nide, Luo Atringo, Se Osuga, Rabaji, Nyaye Yobo, Mita Pipe, don't you da, Garnet Taibi, Puquina Regimka, a 30 zillout and Leonard Driba, a Tom Pubi, a Jampening in Kebare, Dabing, they are Lelo Picamu, Nia and Net Jumola Kebare. Anna Dingani, Naseye, Dala, Natana Senati. Just on Kayare, Pidu Susupao, the Taulia, she says she Ushibare, Passage Bango, the Mudalum Dollar Kajare ne, Malana Secone Nima, a Jampe, Passy Anna Lucy Osuye, Lechene, Lubang the young as she u, they song heavy, no Udola Yekala doing, Pidu Mia so, just on Yare Nile, Chikebare. Se Osu Lepasiriha. Amudamiri, listen can you move Yaduri, Kaletuneri upon Male, Anya attacking Meswa, a 19 soga, Pimatata Piamuri, Pulo Kerago, AAPP Matandri Yatu Shiabare. The Nita doing Amudamita Yachau, listen can you move Yadu Senau, a test session in it, session in Alkali, Diana Senga Uha, a jumper sit Osuya Lechene, no Udola Yima Chason Kebare. လူမြင့်ကွင်းမှာတော့မရှာလက်ရဲစဲရပြုတ်လုံနေတဲ့စစ်အုပ်စုရဲ့လုပ်ရက်တွေကိုကြည့်ချင်းအဖြစ်အများပြည်သူတွေမသိမမြင်နိုင်တဲ့အချုပ်ခန်းတွေအကျဉ်းစခန်းတွေစစ်ကြောရေးတွေမှာဆိုရင်ဘယ်လောက်ဆိုးဝါးနေမလဲဆိုတာမြန်မာနေဆက်မှုကြောင့်တည်ဆုံးသွားခဲ့ရသူ144ဦးကအခိုင်လုံဆုံးသက်သေအဖြစ်ပြသနေပါတယ်ဒီအထဲမှာစစ်ကြောရေးကာလအတွင်းတည်ဆုံးခဲ့ရသူ92ဦးပါဝင်ပါတယ်ဒါအပြင်စကိုင်းတိုင်းနဲ့ကရင်ပြည်နယ်အတွင်းကဒေသတွေမှာအပြစ်မဲ့ပြည်သူ55ဦးဟာမီရှိုတပ်ဖြတ်မှုတွေကြောင့်ခြေကွက်ဖွဲ့ရကောင်းစွာနဲ့အသက်ပေးခဲ့ရတယ်လို့ထိုနည်းတူစွာပဲပဲခူးဖရူဆိုကနီမတူဗီကလေးမျိုးအစရှိတဲ့ဒေသတွေမှာစစ်အုပ်စုရဲ့အစုလိုက်အပြုံလိုက်တပ်ဖြတ်မှုတွေကြောင့်ပြည်သူ184ဦးတိတ်ဆုံးခဲ့ရပြန်ပါတယ်အနာသိမ်းမှုတစ်နှစ်တာကာလအတွင်းမြို့တွေရွာတွေလူနေရပ်ကွက်တွေမိရှို့ခံရမှုဟာအနည်းဆုံး115ကြိမ်ရှိခဲ့ပြီးအဆောက်အဦပေါင်း2000ထက်မနည်းပျက်စီးဆုံးရှုံးခဲ့ရပါတယ်။ဒီကိန်းကနန်းအရေးအတွက်ဟာလက်လန်းမီတလောက်မှတ်တမ်းပြုစုထားချက်အရာဖြစ်ပြီးမြေပြင်မှာကြီးထက်မကအဆပေါင်းများစွာပုံမနစ်နာဆုံးရှုံးနေမှာအသေးချပါပဲ။ဒါအပြင်အာဏာသိမ်းစစ်အုပ်စုဟာနိုင်ငံနဲ့အဝန်းNLD လွှတ်တော်ကိုယ်စားလှယ်တွေပါတီဝင်တွေနဲ့ပြည်သူတွေရဲ့နေအိမ်နဲ့ပိုင်ဆိုင်မှုတွေကို NUG PDF တို့နဲ့ဆက်သွဲရဆိုပြီးမတရားချိတ်ပိတ်သိမ်းဆည်းမှုတွေလှုပ်ဆောင်လျက်ရှိရာတစ်နှစ်အတွင်းမှာချိတ်ပိတ်သိမ်းဆည်းခံရတဲ့နေအိမ်အဆောက်အအုံပေါင်း269ခုရှိခဲ့ပါတယ်ဒီမှတ်တမ်းတွေဟာနိုင်ငံရေးအကျဉ်းသားများကုညီဆောက်ရှောက်ရေးအသင်း AAPP ကစောင့်ကြည့်မှတ်တမ်းတင်ထားချက်တွေအပေါ်အခြေခံထားတာဖြစ်ပြီးတကယ်လက်တွေ့တိုင်းတစ်ပြည်လုံးရင်ဆိုင်ခံစားနေရတဲ့အနိုင်ကျင့်စော်ကားခံရမှုတွေနဲ့ဒုက္ခတွေဟာတိထက်ပိုမိုဆိုးဝါးကြီးမားနှက်ဆိုင်လာပါတယ်။ယဉ်ကျေးတဲ့လူအဖွဲ့အစည်းတရားအနေနဲ့ဘယ်လိုမှလက်သင့်မခံနိုင်တဲ့လူမဆန်တဲ့ဖြစ်ရဆိုကြီးအပေါ်အခုလိုထုတ်ဖော်ပြောဆိုခြင်းဟာဒီမိုကရေစီနဲ့လူအခွင့်အရေးကိုလေးစားတန်ဖိုးထားတဲ့ပြည်သူလူထုရဲ့ရက်စွမ်းတတ္တိနဲ့တာဝန်တည်တတ်မှုပဲဖြစ်ပါတယ်။ပိဿမှုတိုင်းမှာထိုက်တန်တဲ့ရလဒ်ရှိစေပါအာဏာရှင်စနစ်ကြဆုံးရမည်အရေးတော်ပုံမှုတ်ချအောင်
Thank you very much. We can turn the lights on now. And I'd like to invite the two panelists we have in-house to the stage and bring on, good evening, there is Noor Sirsa, and we have two other panelists. Can we bring them all on at once, Julian? Is that possible? Or? Oh, okay, right. So, before I introduce the panelists and kick it all off, there's just a couple of little housekeeping announcements to remind you. It's mainly because it's such a significant moment, I think, is the first anniversary of the coup. A lot of people have objected to calling it an anniversary because it implies it's a happy occasion, but we all know it's anything but. So we have a number of events, but one I'd really like to flag is that the FCCT is partnering to be involved in the second Burma Spring Benefit Film Festival, which kicks off today online. A whole heap of Myanmar films of different descriptions, but this Thursday, so day after tomorrow, the FCCT will have a special evening screening 3 short films created by Burmese filmmakers, including the Bangkok premiere of Walking Through Darkness by Aung Hlaing So. The film follows 5 journalists as they document the brutality the Myanmar military has shown against its own people. And there will be a discussion with the filmmakers afterwards. And ticket proceeds for the evening, which is only 200 baht a head, will go to causes supported by the Burma Spring Film Festival, Burma Spring Benefit Film Festival. And also the FCCT will partner with BSBFF, and films will be screening online from today for the next 2 weeks. And if you're interested, you can see the details and the program online. We have a notice on our website and Facebook page. Now, there are a number of other events, including the launch of a human rights report at 10 a.m. on, that was today. There's a couple of other things, so please check our schedule on Facebook and the website. Now to our discussion of the evening, which is Unhappy Anniversary, Myanmar's coup and the year ahead. And I'd just like to, before introducing our panellists, perhaps make the point, if I can ask for a bit of silence at the back there, that 1 year after Myanmar's military ousted the National League for Democracy government, I think we can all say that junta leader Min Aung Hlaing has really failed to consolidate power amid intensifying conflict in many parts of the country. And the savage campaigns by security forces to stamp out resistance have seen actually now the figure is more than 407,000 displaced just since February 1. That brings to close to 800, I think over 800,000 people displaced internally in Myanmar now, which is a shocking figure considering the gains that have been made in the last 10 years. And as AAPP, who just made the film you saw, has reported, about 1,500 civilians have been killed, nearly 11,700 arrested, and new figures that I think you'll be seeing cited widely in the media are putting the total deaths on all sides, including People's Defence Force fighters, military, as well as ethnic fighters and civilians, at 12,000 just in a year. That puts Myanmar up with Syria and other failed or failing states, I'm afraid. So I'd just like to turn straight to our excellent panel and introduce them before we go into discussion. So on the far right in the clubhouse is Min Aung, Executive Director of the Institute for Strategy and Policy, Myanmar. And next to him, closest to me, is Anthony Davis, Regional Security Analyst and Consultant for Jane's Defence Publishing Group. On the screen, on the upper left hand, you see Noor Sursur, who is Secretary General of the Women's League of Burma and wears a couple of other hats. She's very active in the KNU on many things, and also is a delegate to the NUCC, the National Unity Consultative Council, which has just had its first ever People's Assembly. Next to her is Pado Sortoni, Head of the Foreign Department of the Karen National Union. Good evening, Sortoni. And below them is Thinza Shunlei, Advocacy Coordinator for ACDD, the Action Committee for Democracy Development, and a Foreign Affairs Committee member of the General Strike Committee, which has been extremely active since February 1. So we'd like to kick off. I've asked Min Aung, as the kind of academic amongst all of you, to kick off with an overview, and he's also got presentation slides including maps and things, so we'll come back to our panelists on the screen after that. So Min Aung, over to you.
Thank you. Can I use this one?
Yes, you can, yeah.
Good evening. Thank you, Gwen and FCCT, to give me this opportunity. Let me thank you all who joined in this event in person and also who are watching live streaming online. My presentation will be in 3 parts. In the first part, I will give data and evidence to recap what Myanmar has gone through in 2021. And I'll bring your attention to appreciate the crisis not as a snapshot, but as a contextualized process. The second part, I will outline possible scenarios. I will focus default scenarios and possible intervention scenarios. Finally, I will go on to talk about turning point analysis and possible entry point that probably we can explore. Which I should aim for.
Oh, is it not working?
Okay.
Julian.
Does it work?
Sorry.
Yeah, let's move on to the first part of my talk. I think a year has been on. The military junta has intensified crackdowns. At the same time, the resistance movement are resilient and quite determined and widespread. We just heard a report of self-immolation. A person set fire himself to protest against the military. Both the coup makers and the resistance movement are locking themselves into a position where a violent resolution of conflict is the only conceivable strategy. The conflict has escalated, can even be characterized as a negative spiral. Politics, as we know, a peaceful means to transform conflict, has been abandoned, at least for now. Let's look at the data to explain the severity of the conflict. In this chart, you can see in 2021 alone, almost 36,000 civilian deaths due to the conflict. In AAPP estimates, they said 1,400 got killed because of the SAC crackdown. At the same time, SAC, they listed 1,800 civilian deaths. Many of them are government officials. Some of them are alleged as a SAC informant and the victims of bomb and targeted killing. So when you combine all these numbers together, we can easily say at least 3,600 people got killed in 2021 alone, which is probably the highest record of civilian death in over 3 decades. In this chart, you could see two information. One, in the spider web chart, you can see the headshot, sorry. And the civilian who was shot in the death, there are about 158 people got headshot. In the bar chart, you can see at least 99 people got killed during the interrogation centers. That this is an arrest since the military coup. Again, the numbers depends on which number we gather, but SAC, at least 11,000 people they said they arrested in 2021. AAPP basically said 11,000. In AAPP detainee list, they included mostly non-violent civilian being arrested. In SAC list, all of them, they said terrorists, basically those who are linked with the PDF forces. But one caveat we should pay attention to, this is the Today newspaper that cited the Commander-in-Chief, SAC chairman, speech last night. In his speech, he said there were 4,338 terrorists being arrested in 2021. It was mentioned in the newspaper this morning. But ironically, a very funny thing is, 2 weeks earlier, his information minister, his spokesman, said in the press conference there was 11,549 people as a terrorist being arrested. So 3 times higher. This shows serious discrepancy, even within the SAC. This shows clear incompetency. And at the same time, for all of us as researchers, to be very careful with the numbers being released by the SAC. I think let me move to another topic, which is new conflict map and new actors. Since the military crackdown became ruthless, the parallel government, National Unity Government, NUG, called for defense war against the junta. And at the same time, NUCC, as a broad coalition of several anti-junta forces, convened recently a People Assembly, and they pledged to root out all kinds of dictatorship and establish federal democracy with ratification of Federal Charters 1 and 2. People Defense Forces and various local defense forces are gaining ground in several regions of the country, fought back against the military troops. Insurrection broke out not only in the ethnic regions, but also in the heartland Burma regions. A new conflict map with a new set of conflict actors have emerged with rapid rise of human costs and material damages such as infrastructures and cities. And also armed conflict in the ethnic region, especially in Karen and then Karenni, have recently intensified. Of course, we have already saw very intense fighting in the Chin State and also Kachin State before September. You can see this map where you have different dots explain armed clashes between SAC forces and EAOs, SAC forces and local PDF, and then clashes between EAO themselves. There are at least, what we documented, 2,300 armed clashes occurred throughout Myanmar, which we mean sustained exchange of fire, not just PDF, ambush or attack the police station, which sustained exchange of fire, at least 2,300 armed clashes we documented. And what we found out was at least 54 airstrikes, 33 of them took place in last December. And what we also noted is the many villages, houses are being burned down by the military. And at the same time, you can see this type of brutality, not only villages are being burned down, but also civilian, especially in the Kaya State and Zagain, burned alive to death in many incidents. This is again another way to explain the highest toll of civilian death took place in December, largely because of Kaya State killing and airstrikes in the Zagain and Magwe. In terms of IDP, until January 20, we updated at least 500,000 people are being displaced. Interestingly, Kaya State, half of the population have been displaced, uprooted from their places. And then the second and third, Zagain and Magwe region, which are basically Burma heartland, which have usually never seen this large-scale IDP situation. So what we are now talking mainly about the securities and gross human rights violation. There are also other situations such as freedom of expression, and then the shutdown of internet, and then the brutality and disruption of public access to the public health during the COVID-19 pandemic. All of these things, when you compound together, the death of civilian in 2021 seemed to be very hard to imagine, in terms of scale and brutality. Now, we can do more analysis. I think the military is not able or not likely to gain tactical ground control in time to hold any meaningful, I will emphasize, any meaningful political project such as new election in 2023. Instead, it continues to commit severe human rights violation and then mindless tyrannical brutality that will cause huge humanitarian catastrophe. Not only in terms of tactical ground control, but in terms of strategic exit. I don't see military has any credible political exit strategy, which is pretty much different from the previous military coups in Myanmar. In previous military coup in '62, at least General Ne Win articulated Burmese way to socialism as an ideology and political exit strategy. And in 1988-89, the military offered crony capitalism that broadened so much opportunity for the ordinary people too. Even though we strongly protest against exploitation, but still some type of trickle down we could not deny. And also the senior general Tanshri in 2010 came up with this is a choice. Whether do you want to go from the country without constitution to the country with a constitution? That also provided as the only game in town at the time. That's why international community even back up the newly military linked government of Thein Sein administration. So now with the current SAC, they do not have any kind of political exit strategy. Their roadmap, that promise holding new election with the PR electoral system, is totally lack of credibility. Not only by the who are fighting against them, but also who are willing to be co-opted by the military reserve, they can do it. So what would happen? This is a possible two default scenario. One is the baseline scenario, which is the junta's roadmap, which is increasingly challenging to get implemented. But we cannot rule out it will not happen. Because in 1951 and 52, there was a Burmese election took place. It took 6 months in 3 different installments of supplementary elections. The voter turnout was only less than 20%. But at the time, the government, together with the military, they push it through. They push ahead with the weak legitimacy and also that kind of election. So we could not rule out the possibility of replay of 51, 52 type of election. Another default trend, which is worst case scenario, they are twofold. One is because they cannot hold election, because they cannot get the ground control, they cannot hold election in 2023, the military, they are likely to extend their rule by suspending the constitution. In this case, implosion of the military is very likely unless there is a fundamental security sector reform. For 3 reasons why implosion within the military can take place. One is recruitment challenge. I think the Burmese military has faced unprecedented challenge in terms of recruiting new forces, because their recruiting ground is what we have seen highest rebellious region, Sagaing, Magway, all these Anya heartland regions. So it's very difficult for the Burma military to do recruitment in next 1 to 3 years. And the second one is ideological underpinning. I think as I said, General Ne Win, even the General Kinyon, General Tanshri, they always came up with Burmese way to socialism, Burma Buddhist, patriotism, and all type of thing. But with this current junta, they don't have any ideological legitimacy they can come up with. So, and then also new generations are very much critical of, not only the military, but also Burman-dominated, that culture, Burman-dominated, religious hierarchy. A lot of rebellious try to transform the society. So that's why, I think in this time, it's very unprecedented in history. Burmese military is losing legitimacy, the first time ever in their existence. The last one is crisis of political economy. As we all know, international pressure, sanctions, and then in the post-COVID economy, I think the political economy situation will be very difficult for the Myanmar military. For these three reasons, I don't see it will happen immediately, but in next 2 to 3 years, that the military will feel, unless they change, the implosion, more defecting, more splitting, become more and more to the extent of that roving bandit. They cannot control the situation. So that's the worst case scenario. Second, worst case scenario is the failure of the state institution. All these EAOs are trying to control different regions of the country, and then you will have that decades of low intensity anarchy, which Burma used to experience, since Bagan dynasty. And in this case, likelihood is what Furnival once predicted: after a period of anarchy and warlord, and we will probably see Myanmar becoming a province of China. These are like two default, scenario. If we can intervene the situation to make it better, there are two possible intervention scenarios. The first intervention scenario follows revolutionary pathway, which is very much all or nothing. We will fight. We are determined to fight all the way, to achieve our objective, zero-sum regime change. The second scenario is more like conflict. Let's see this as a conflict rather than revolution or zero-sum issue. Try to transform the conflict by identifying pressures, by putting pressure on the junta, at the same time giving some inducement so that they can come to the table at the end and then make maximum concession to the will of the Myanmar people. This is very largely like non-violent means. Both scenarios, both pathways have profound challenges. The first pathway, revolutionary pathway, will find itself into prolonged and costly struggle in absence of these three factors. One is it needs some kind of counter coup or split within the military that favor the resistance movement. Unless we have that, it will be very difficult for revolutionary pathway to succeed. Second, it's effective foreign intervention. Even for now, with the humanitarian catastrophe, we don't see any coordinated, effective foreign intervention, even from the neighboring countries. So that's a second thing. It would be very difficult for Myanmar to walk on the revolutionary pathway unless we have that intervention. The third is all key ethnic armed groups come together and unify to fight against a junta, which is aspiration, but it's still like myth in the Myanmar insurgency politics, because it's so hard to bring all key EAOs together and unify. Politically it's possible, but militarily it's very challenging to fight against a junta as a unified force. So unless we have these three factors, or at least two factors in combination, it's very difficult for the revolutionary pathway to take place. For the conflict transformation pathway, profound challenges are: one, it's so hard to reframe the crisis from zero-sum radicalism to conflict transformation because of the intense grievances of the public, intense hatred against atrocity. It's so difficult, especially in the social media age, so hard to reframe the perception of the people from the radicalization to more conciliation. Second challenge is we have Asian noodle bowls of the special envoys. Different special envoys have different agenda. So it's so hard to find common ground and coordinated effort among the special envoys, to get something to pull it off in Myanmar case. The third is, in Myanmar political culture, the line that divides between moderate voice and the proxy for the militaries are very thin. So if you raise moderate voice, you can be alleged as you are proxy of the military. So it's so so risky for any moderate civic and political space and actor inside the country to play a role. So, I mean, for me, both pathways are fraught with the challenges. It's not easy route. So let me go very quick so this is, anyway, the chart is, I'll skip. So the last point, I think like, what I've noted since November last year, we've noted that there could be some possible way out, probably suboptimal, not the best that we could expect, as emerged in Myanmar crisis as key diplomats in the powerful international actors, including China, Japan, India, Thailand, even United States, made visit to Naypyidaw. And then we all know the Cambodian Prime Minister made a visit and start talking about low-hanging fruit, to pick the low-hanging fruit and then step-by-step approach. So one of the key diplomats talked to me is quite interesting in the neighboring country. He said, there's a consensus among the neighboring country, which is no country in the region can afford wait-and-see approach now. Myanmar must return to democracy, but not by all means, because further radicalization of the crisis will destroy the already fragile state institution, and then it will create massive spillover to the region. So the neighboring countries really prefer to do something that can de-escalate the conflict. But at the same time, the public perception is so intense, so fiery, and so radicalized. Because in the neighboring country, there are a lot of vested interests involved. Look at China. This is the Chinese, the CMET, we call it the China-Myanmar Economic Corridor, right? And then you see all these conflicts, fighting, clashes, bombing, airstrikes, more or less taking place away from the pipeline, away from the Chinese project, away from the Chinese interests. It's not coincidence, right? So it's very important why neighboring countries can afford Myanmar becoming radicalized, and then wake up in the morning, they don't know how to contain the spillover effect. So this is very obvious, facts that we can look into. So the less is, I talk about the possible like turning point, emerging since November. And then what would be the entry point? I think that one of the key things is humanitarian issue is a serious issue. So I think we should pay attention to humanitarian issue as a good entry point to de-escalate the conflict and find a possible solution, and in this case by recognizing all key stakeholders, including NUG, NUCC, PDF. Without recognizing their role, these new actors, I don't think we will see sustainable even de-escalation, let alone conflict resolution. All attempts, as I said, must aim for de-escalation so that eventually politics as a peaceful means to transform the conflict can be brought back in this ill-fated country, Myanmar. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Min Aung, for kicking it off and really laying out a very good overview and a lot of maps and a lot of food for thought. I'd like to now leap out of the FCCT over to wherever she is, Noor Sursa. So have we just, there she is. Hi, good evening, Noor Sursa. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you've been very busy. So you wear a lot of hats, as we discussed, Women's League of Burma, NUCC, KNU. We'd be really interested in how you saw the last year and the year ahead. I know you've got a few things to say, so over to you, and thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank for invited me to the this discussions. That's one, and that's FCCT. It's also nice to meet you all. So may I share my PowerPoint? So I think the host has to allow me to share my PowerPoint. So before them, when I listen from the one introduction and also Siamese in overview, so that's a lot of issues that covered in my presentation. So I may not speak all those things, and also I will more focuses on the woman perspective in the military coup and also in the other role of the women. So firstly, I would like to explain out of that, and also I would like to take a little bit time because I have aware that I have to speak in 7 minutes, so I don't think I will cover all the things that I would like to say. So I might be take 2-3 more minutes because I would like to focus most on the NUCC. As a member of NUCC and also as a representative of WLB, the NUCC. So this will take a little bit time. So I just apologize before I start my presentation. Yeah. So can host allow me to share screen? Hello?
Yes, sorry. Yes, go on. Julian, you can't share the PowerPoint?
It's host disabled, sir.
Host disabled. Sorry about this. We didn't know there would be a PowerPoint. I think, Kuntam, can you sort that out? Is it? Okay, good. Abled.
Okay.
Enabled. Thank you.
So, I would like to introduce a little bit about Women's Legal Burma, WLB. We call it WLB in short name. So WLB is made up of 30 women's organizations representing women from different ethnic and also religions, and also we are diversity groups and it's also this diverse group is also our strength. So we have a long history of reporting the human rights abuse perpetrated by the military for over 13 years. WLB has drawn on the collected strength of women's leaders to call for a peaceful, just and a federal democratic union of Burma. And also collectively, WLB work for the advancement of the status of women and peaceful and just and a federal democratic union. So to date, I'm gonna focus on impact of the coup on women and also women human rights defenders, and the role of women's leaders and NUCC, and also the next how the call action or next go ahead now. So in the impact of the coups on the women. So this is I have updated on January 28. So Siamese has mentioned based on the AAPP and also other reported. So here, so there's more than 107 women were killed, and also more than 1,537 in prison. So and there's some women were warranted, and also some were detained already. And that as long as WLB also we have a lot of things, and especially focuses on women in armed conflict area. So especially rape as a weapon of war. So this is, we have documented information and also reports, and also advocate for many decades. So for decades, the military has systematically used sexual violence as a weapon of war. WLB documented 104 cases women who were raped by the Hotam between 2010 and 2011, and also 47 cases were brutally raped. In 2018, the UN General Secretary report found the Hotam widespread threat and use of the sexual violence was intended to their strategy, humanitarian terrorists, and also collectively punishing the Rohingya community. So if you have look, whenever the conflict happening in different ethnic areas, so the sexual violence or the rape used as a weapon. So here is 2021 that I have mentioned some cases. So in November 31, so 62 years old woman from the Kukan township, so was raped at her homes, and also a few days later, mother of a 1-month-old child was repeatedly raped by the Hotam, and also in front of her husband, and a guy white in the island village in Chin State. Oh, sorry. And the same evenings, the victims, 30 years old sister-in-law who was 7 months pregnant was also raped by the Hotam. So this is some the case. So what we have collected, there are more than 9 rape case committed by the Hotam. So it also might be more than that, but because we can either have access the internet some places, and also some victor or some witness also are not able to report to us and to others as well. So in eternal displaced people, and also focuses on the woman. So myself, I went to the displaced people and sees the situations, and that there's a lot of, especially women and pregnant women and baby moms, all those women are faces and suffer more than the other people, like regular people, normal people. So before the coup, as we know, there are over 97,200 people had been displaced since then. And the number has grown up to more than 881,937 people displaced in widespread in the Burma in different ethnic area. And that women are disproportionately impacted by the displacement. Pregnant women are forced to give birth in harrowing conditions as a woman struggle to access family planning and health care services for safe pregnancy and childbirth. A pregnant woman who had been displaced over time suffered a miscarriage during her 7 months, while suffer from the physical exhaustion and trauma. IDP are suffering from scarcity of food assistance, and the hotel continue to block aid routes and also preventing the distribution of urgent food, shelter, medicine, and also taking the pack to meet women's needs, and especially women who has menstruation in Siam. So IDPR also suffer from this. So this not the especially in the cross border. We also have need support from the especially Thai side to allow to open the assistant to cross to the humanitarian aid assistant to the cross border to the inside Burma, and also some IDP also cross to the Thailand. So need also temporary shelter, temporary camp in the Thai Burma borders. So this is a woman human rights defender. So women human rights defender include LGBT, represent different ethnic, religions, and age unit in our collective cause to dismantle and also delegitimize the Hotam, and the women and also LGBT are leading protests in our communities all across the country. women and also LGBT who have been arrested and detained by the junta are reporting sexual assaults by the prison guard during their interrogations. They are also reported being denied bathing water and medical care, leading to the spread of the disease and sickness. We are, and this is the voice from the women human rights defender. So we are not safe. We are fearful for our safety and the safety of the families. We are not sleeping in our home at night. We change location regularly and move it to safe with our small children in extremely difficulty. So this is the voice from the women human rights defenders. So women's and also LGBT others continue to face, be arrested and be killed, and also be warranted and detained and certain, and also be tortured, include experience of sexual violence and sexual harassment. So the role of women, so as I have been mentioned a lot, is that in the early days of the protests, many women took prominent visible role. They sent a powerful message that the democracy movement or this resistance movement is a space for the women and for people in Burma. Especially we are resist not only end any dictatorship, but also end any patriarchy system and also any domination by the men and also any discrimination either. Women are also present in every aspect of the resistance against the junta. Women continue to lead protests. So you may see from the news. So we had a women's strike group, and also we have a women PDF, and also we have women's who are bravely and be in the front lines. So that women continue to lead, protect, and also they have joined armed resistance as well. And that the other women also joining in the CDM and also joining or helping or support humanitarian aid to the IDP. However, women are not just present on the ground. They are also raising their voice and advocating to the international community. Some are also taking a leadership and a decision-making role in NUG or NUCC or any other political platforms to raise the voice and to push to have a woman leader in the decision-making level. So before them, I would like to share about NUCC a little bit, that some may be already aware of the NUCC that released or published on November 16, 2031. So we have, at the time, we have a press conference and giving awareness or let the people aware about the NUCC. So the NUCC was initially formed on March 8, but at the time we just call like a prototype NUCC. Last 2-3 days we have adopted and formally formed in the People Assembly. So the NUCC constitutes a representative from 33 various political institutions, including committee representing Pirauzul Luto, CRPH, with a de jure political legitimacy from the landslide November 2020 general election, and ethnic resistant organization. Why I'm saying resistant organization, because most of the ethnic that we aware the EU, but they are changed to call the name of the ethnic resistant organization. So we call ERO. And that federal unit and a nationality-based consultating council, some states and some nationalities, they form as a consultative council and they come in and join to the NUCC. And also we had general strike group, and then we had political party, and then we have women's groups and civil society group, and also labor groups. So all those groups come in and join NUCC as a NUCC member, adopt in the last 2-3 dates in people assemblies. Yeah. So what is the role of the NUCC? So to form a strong government, which is we form NUG already, and also which is meaningful. We are trying to have meaningful representation to who all who are against military dictatorship and all dictators, and also aim to go to have a federal democratic union in Burma. So we also take the road that guide a policy guided to the NUG, and also to the any joint committee, joint committee that we're going to implement in the ground, and we're going to implement based on the issue. And also, as a NUCC, in the NUCC, we have been through 10 months, and also we organized and did the People Assembly from on January 27 to the 39th, and that we adopt Charter. Actually, Charter has been announced in last March 31. I don't remember. So, but when we have look the charter, not like we want the principle, and also not comprehensive, and also not how to say many different like it. So that's why we took times many months, and then we reviewed it, and they put it the point, especially in Charter 1. If we said at least, if not 100%, we agreed on the principle, but 90% we agreed on the principle that we go to one for the Bill of Federal Democratic Union. And that basically NUCC, we are started practice federal principles. So for now, we come together as a collective leadership between de facto and de jure. So this we come concept the same on the Federal Democratic Union. So that's why we are also trying to, and also push it the principle to be implemented, start pronounced. But we need more time, and we need to build up the trust, and also we need to encourage, and we need to help it to understand, to have common understanding on the federal system as well. So this is the briefly of the NUCC. So you can have more questions that I can answer for the leader. And that I would like to emphasize a little bit on the perspective of the WLB. So in the NUCC, Women's League of Burma and other women has been advocate for women participation in the decision making or in the political table or negotiation table in many decades. But we never ever get the chance in the other decades. But for this time, so we want invite to be in the political table, negotiation table, and discuss, especially based on our principle and our goal. So we are the first women that delegate in the delegate of women in the political dialogue, the platform of the NUCC. And also in the NUCC, that's a lot of concern member from different groups. So total more than 56. So out of the 56 in the NUCC members, there are only 7 women in there. So we are pushing and also encourage them to have more women, because we have a principle, and we put the principle in the charter that at least women participation in different decision-making level. And that's what we are advocated in the NUCC, especially we have a principle, the main principle of equality and self-determination. not only we are advocating for that, but also we are advocate the perspective of the gender, and also inclusive and collective leadership. And that we are also pushing not only NUCC platform, but also any other policy maker and a stakeholder, even not involved in the NUCC either. We are trying to advocate in different ways to recognize the role of a woman in every level, in decision-making level. And also we advocate for the women's rights and other perspective to be reflected in the Charter, especially Federal Democratic Charter Part 1 and Part 2 as well. So all those, this is NUCC and also the Women's League Government involvement in the NUCC. So in the NUCC, we have a lot of challenges and also security risks, and also we have to be careful of the thing, and also have to be careful all of the alliance between alliance, how we're going to build up the trust, and also how we're going to come together and unite together to build up the Federal Democratic Union. So this is still going and build out the trust and still going on to have more concrete principle in the Charter. And also we are also open the flow from the other groups to come and join to the NUCC, and also the Charter also we keep as a living document, and you can ever change, or you want to amend, or you can have as a procedure. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nucc. That was really thorough rundown. Obviously, the NUCC has a lot of work to do with still only 7 women out of that whole council. But anyway, that's for further discussion. I'd next like to turn to Para Sotoni of the KNU, and don't go away, Nucc. We'll come back with some questions, hopefully. And just to remind people, we will have a little bit of time for questions at the end if you want to ask any over Facebook, if you're looking at Facebook or YouTube, or from the floor. So right now, turning to Sotoni, and Sotoni, you might, I know we discussed that we'd be very keen to hear your perspective as both KNU, and you were also involved with the People's Assembly and the NUCC, and perhaps also comment on an issue that I think everyone's very interested in, is the growing cooperation between ethnic, well, now you're calling them EROs, and ethnic resistance organizations and PDFs, if you have some thoughts on that as well. But I'll turn over to you. Thank you. Can you hear us? Hello?
Hello.
Oh, good.
Hello, this is my turn, right?
This is your turn. Did you hear me?
Yeah, yes. Sorry. I thought that it might be from things.
No, it's all over to you. The show is yours right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much for having a chance to talk with you this evening. Good evening, everybody. Yes, firstly, I would like to thank you all. I'm from the Grand National Union, and this the unhappy anniversary, but we don't want to say anything about it. But you know that before the coup, we are very excited, and then the commitment to the peace process, you know very well about it, and then we have the experience with the peace process for 7 and 8 years, along with the Burmese military. But you know that we had a lot of challenges with dealing with the Burmese military. We reached agreement of nationwide ceasefire agreement to the political dialogue, but along with the Burmese military, for 5 or 6 years with the political dialogues. We have a lot of challenges. They don't follow with anything that they agreed in the agreement. So this is the problem. It is make a lot of problems with the peace process. You know that, and according to our agreement, we need to implement everything. But even though after signing agreement, they don't follow anything. It is clear that very hard for us to maintain this ceasefire and the political dialogue. Finally, that it is end with a military coup. So from KNU, Korean National for this coup, and a coup and any dictatorship, it is a zero tolerance for our organizations. Then the next date of the military coup, and then to release our statement that we have a strong position that against with the military coup, and that at the same time we stand together with the people who against the military. That's why since the military coup, just after 3 days, we set up the EC meetings, and then we send out our directions and instructions to our district level that please be careful about it, and then you need to be ready for emergency food, for the emergency relief for the people. You know that the military regimes not only how to kill people and then torture, brutality, everything. That this is not the first time for us. We had experience in the 1962 and in 1988. So we sent our instruction to our district leaders that you need to be ready, everything for the people. Yes. After we sent out our message to our district, and then just a few weeks, the people started fleeing to our area. You know that by the end of February, they start killing the people in cities and towns, and then more and more the people arriving in other areas, all walks of lives, including with lawyers, doctors, and so we started with a few people, 20, 30, and then hundreds and thousands of people in our area. This is the things that we want to show that we based on our policy that humanitarian view is very important for us, and then we as much as we can, we follow with international humanitarian laws. Even though they are not our people, our current people, they all are human beings. When they face the difficulty like that, we cannot stay away from them, and we accept them as our workers, our colleagues who will fight against with the military. Since then, many people in our area, you know that, but this is the real situation that we have to carry, and we have to shoulder the heavy burdens. But it is a good point for us that as we have experienced that it didn't work with the peace process in the past, and now it is the right time to turn. It is the thing that we can say that it is a turning point for us that working together with the people from inside of Burma and work together and then to fight against the military regimes. So this is a good point for us that even though we have a lot of challenges, and then we started talking together with them day by day with very big discussions with them, and then we started forming NUCC in the summertime, and then after that with NUG, National Unity Government. So this is the things that we made within 1 year. Now you know that according to the presentation from Nucc, you know that this is a very detail of the forming how to form the NUCC at the time. So now we would like to say that because our policy since 1956, we based on our policy, we already set up that this country we can build through federal and democracy. So this is the thing that we set up in 1956. We still firmly standing on this position until now, and we need to remember that our great leader Severity said, if you want to get your destinations or you to achieve your goals, you need the support from Burmese people. Without Burmese people support and assistance from them, you cannot reach there. It is the thing that he said in the past 70 years ago, but it is difficult for us to get this situation. But right now, you know that everything come true, that Burmese people stand together with us. And then we do believe that even though we have a lot of challenges, the international community are not very excited and very active for working together with us in many ways. But we do believe that working together with our peoples in our country, that is the things that we do believe that to reach our goal. And the thing that the next thing that I would like to point out that just a few days ago, on 20th of the January, we released the joint statement of the you know that at these times we are facing with the situation in everywhere. According to the military make offenses to our area, every brigade have with a very tough situation. But you know that from the military side, I mean from Burmese military, now they totally relies on the air attacks to our area, but mainly it's a targeted hit to the civilian. This is very bad for us. So this is the things that we released our statement that and call for emergency to the international community that we really need your help for our peoples. So because we are very limited situation to against the area attacks. And then so this the things important for us that we really have a kind of like a safe zone for the people who fled to our area. So many people now up to 70,000 of the IDPs in our area started from northern part to southern part. So this is very important for us. Not only our people, also with the things that happen, not only our area, but also in the other places. Now, yes, as we know that from the heartland area in the majority Burmese people there, now, day by day and every day, the people run away from their village and they're destroyed by the SAC. So this is the same situation with us. So it is pointing that international community need taken actions at once for these situations, even though they don't have a situation that help us in military way or something like that. But in a humanitarian point of view, we really need to kind of assistance from the international community to have and to create a safe zone for these the people facing with area attacks and that. Heavy shelling to the civilians, something like that. So this is the thing that you would like to point out. We really need to have things that from the international community to take actions at once. So the last thing I would like to point out that the demand for the people. This is a very strong demand for the people that we already have experience dealing with the Burmese military for many years with the peace process, but it didn't work. Now we facing with the tough situation that facing with the conflicts in everywhere, everyone, not many people's involvement in the how to fight against with the SAC. So now the Burmese people, all the people in this country demanded that military must withdraw from the politics. This is the first thing. And the second thing, we need, we built our country through the federal democracy. These federalism in the past 30 years ago, if you say federalism, the Burmese people will say that this you try to separate from the country, you succeed trying to succeed from the union, something like that. But now the Burmese people don't say like that. They agree with the founding the country through federalism and democracy. So we are the same of the situation like that, and then we have the common enemy. And then we need only to fight for it. And then throughout the years 2021, since the military coup, we started forming and discuss with among ourselves, even though we have the different backgrounds of the situation from many groups, but now we're trying to build a form organization like National Unity Consultative Councils. And then we had so many like the the Joint Coordination Committee for working together for implementation. So this is a very good point that in the 2022, we can say that yes, this year it must be to knock out the military regime in our country. Then we reformed our country with a new stance and new constitutions. So this is the things that I want to share here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, So Tony. That was very short and intense. Well, you raised many points there, so hopefully maybe come back into it with questions. I'd next like to turn to Thinza Shunlei, who also wears a number of hats, quite a few actually, and I think though one of the most striking things, Shunlei, when I interviewed you and you've pushed this message home about how the real game changer and the new thing about all the resistance we're seeing now is youth, and also some of the other points. So please, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And also, I truly appreciate to each of you for you show up today. Today means a lot to us. It's such a day that we commemorate our resistance and our resilience and our extreme oppression by the same institution for the past 7 decades. And also thinking of all the oppressed people, including Rohingya populations, I truly appreciate your continued solidarity with the people of Myanmar. And at the same time, today, I want to pay my tributes to all the fallen heroes and heroines, because I take this opportunity to express an opinion. Also today, I want you to remember and go out from Japadao, from Mandalay region, where this noon he set himself to death on fire in a way to protest the junta. He left a note to all of us that he mentioned, may all the people of Myanmar have 24-hour electricity, and we don't want to go back to 2001 and 2003.
Okay.
Are
you okay? Junlei, are you okay? Yeah, she's talking about the self-immolation case today.
Yes, this is the first self-immolation case ever recorded, and I was so shocked. Today it was the silent strikes. Everyone went in silence, and so that case clearly show the current situation of the people living inside country, and all different. Even though they keep on resisting and in all different forms, with every possible way they join in the silent strike despite all the different difficulties. But it's already been a year, so I want everyone to reflect on what had been wrong since the very beginning. This was also one of the first questions when the military state occurred on 1st February on 2021. I also asked myself, what went wrong since the very beginning? Because we have done everything we can to work for a federal democratic nation with all the possible channels and mechanisms, including panel peace agreement, where all the current leaders and all the other different ethnic revolution leaders, they try to shake hands with the military, but things have gone wrong. And I think this is a moment where every international actor, including the governments, have to ask themselves what was wrong from the very beginning. So as I'm asked today to present about the game changer of the young population, I would say our young generation, who are 60% of the population, they are already there resisting the political framework. They didn't agree with 2008 constitution. And I remember last year, 2021, in the January and December, I remember some of the student activists were jailed to 7 years in prison because they protested against the Rakhine crisis, and they were asking military to stop all violences, including Rohingya crisis. But these young people voices were not heard and they were not seen enough. Now we talk about Generation Z, young people on the front line and all sorts of things.
Shulay, I think
at the same time,
the sound is cutting out a little bit. If maybe you can adjust the microphone or something.
yeah, I turn off my earpiece.
Oh, that's better. Yeah, maybe that's better.
The young generations, they have been there since the very beginning, but they were not heard enough, seen enough. But now we talk about the Generation Z, we talk about the young people at the front lines, you know, all sort of things, only because they are there getting killed and getting arrested. They were the first to target it by the military, all the students. For example, 31st January mark 91st anniversary of the founding of Yangon University Student Union. They've been keeping principal politics all along, but they were largely neglected. Now these young generations lost a formal platform to discuss their political ideas and opinions. Even now today in the revolution, they are not yet in the decision-making position. They are still on the ground fighting as a soldier, on the street protesting, getting killed, and always hiding in fear and sort of thing. So I would say the lack of consistent platforms for the voices of young people, led by young people, also the lack of safe spaces for the young human rights defenders and activists inside the outside country, the lack of policy and laws that can guarantee the young people voices will be integrated in the decision-making level, the lack of security and capacity to input young youth voices in the international mechanism. I appreciate that you are inviting young person and young women and women, including this panel, but are we sure they are all in other different international platforms and where their voices be heard? So at the same time, the lack of knowledge, the young people, we were trained and we were kind of living through this military propaganda, but also the young people, surprisingly, were the ones who broke the silence and who took a strong stand against all forms of dictatorship and fascism and supremacist chauvinistic idea. They are still leading. And as we see this revolution, we have three main front lines. As you see, the armed resistance, it has been there since 7 decades ago. Also, the political resistance by different political stakeholders, such as NUG, NUCC, and different other ethnic arms and the revolutionary organizations. At the same time, there is another one big front line that we miss to, normally we forget to mention, is the ideological revolutions. So all the front line must be guided by the rightful ideologies and to replace the ideology that been instilled in our society, deeply embedded in our society for so many years and decades by the militaries. So now the young generations are all taking up different platforms, risking, and they are saying things under their name, risking their security to replace these ideology. They are on ground, you can see, and I truly encourage you to listen to the protester and also ground strike committee members and so on. And another thing is when we look at the root causes of the situation in the country, we shouldn't forget the first is there is no justice and accountability taken by the leaders in the past or the present. That's one main thing that we see. And the second is the fascism is rising up. There were different signs and signals, but we tend to forget and ignore. So the fascism is taking place into a new form under the name of national security or nationalisms. And that's one main idea. The military is now binding itself inside the military, trying to keep the soldier not to defect or so. So these are the main ideologies, also not just inside military, but also we could see this in our society as well. And the third thing is the racism, the ultra-nationalism, the chauvinistic idea, also the oppression and discrimination against ethnic minorities and religious minorities, the rise of militarism,
And the fourth thing is the lack of the will, political will, genuine political will for the federal democratic nation. So these are the main root causes. And at the same time, when we talk about the root causes, young people reflected on this, and we have raised our three finger with three key demands. And we still keep these demands with us to end all forms of dictatorship, to abolish the 2008 Constitution, and to form federal democratic nation. Also, we have three key demands. In this first anniversary of the Spring Revolution, we also demand international community and everyone who are affiliating with the military and affiliated businesses and their affiliations, we ask to cut the cash, also cut the arms flow to the military, as well as cut the impunity. So as our young generations, our biggest demand is justice and accountability for a newer nation. So now we are seeing leadership of other different nations like US, Canada, UK, and EU imposing sanctions and on businesses and targeted sanctions on different individuals. But we don't see the leadership for justice and accountability. We need to see this year in 2022. So that's the main thing. As well as when we talk about the revolution, we want to make sure that NUCC or NUG or any forms of revolutions, we have to go in a collective leadership. And that's what is so challenging. People Assembly being convinced, but of course there are many different challenges, including the trust issue. It will take time, but this is the only path. And at the same time, there are other different international actors. For example, last night, we have heard of the Dr. Noeleen Heyzer interview talking about power sharing. And because the military is in control and we need to compromise and sort of this idea. This is not the first time we heard from different international developments. I wonder, have they ever reflected on what was wrong in the very beginning and what gave the power to the military to stage a coup after committing genocide 4 years ago, after committing countless crimes several decades ago? So I feel like the international community have not yet reflected on themselves and their action, and they keep repeating the same narrative of sharing the power with the military. We strongly condemn this kind of narration because we see military itself is being charged and accused of genocide and other different crimes in different international court. And as a UN Special Envoy speaking out as such, did not fit with what the UN stands for and what UN is for. So I think it's so important to know the military is a perpetrator, not a political stakeholder for new nation. They are the criminals to be held accountable. This is what the ground strike committee and young people are trying to make sure, trying to give you the message every day, getting on the street, risking their life to ensure you don't give legitimacy in any forms, even with that narrative that we put on different media, naming the military as the ruler or NUG as the shadow government. This is harmful to the revolution. So I hereby call or to ensure you repeat and you kind of check back with the narrative you are putting on to inform your audience, because the revolution it's only 1 year for the Spring Revolution, but for Karen people, for Kachin people, for other different minorities, it has been decades and decades. Now is the time we all put all our effort to ensure that the power is with us, and all the military, not just in Myanmar, around the world, shouldn't be inspired by the action of the military. Just because they have bigger end power, they are in the position as a political stakeholder. This is not fair for the country, and this is exactly why democracy is backsliding this year. So let's hold each other accountable, especially international government, even journalists, even media. We need to hold each other accountable. This is how I think we can never return to February or January 31st, 2021, because now this revolution is trying to normalize the resistance. We are going for a new normal, even amid all these depresses new. We're going for a new normal. We can't go back to an old normal. So I reject all the other different efforts by different stakeholders who are trying to lead us to the backward. We don't want to repeat the same cycle anymore. We need a breakthrough with a new thinking for a new federal democratic nations. Thank you so much.
And then Shunlei. Thank you so much for that. Before we turn to Tony, I'd just like to follow up with one very quick question, because you're also involved with NUCC General Strike Committee. Do you feel more encouraged now from the results of the People's Assembly about your whole point about young people and being listened to, even though there's still relatively few people under 40 on the NUCC? How do you feel now?
I would say that NUCC is now having some young people leading, trying to shape. I think the young people are no more waiting for the permission from the older generations or any leaders to give us a permission. So if something's wrong, the young people are there ready to hold leaders accountable. So this is how I feel empowered, looking at other different young women and different young striker, protester in different front lines. So obviously there are many other different things that I disappointed. This is the very beginning. It will take time, but this is the right part. Compared to 2008 Constitution, compared to all the parliamentarian public hearing I was leading in Naypyidaw, this is truly meaningful. This is the platform we've been needing. We need it. It's a longitude cost. So I'm patient and I'm practical, realistic, and I think we need to empower each other along the way, and this is the right path. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll come back maybe to some of those points. And last but very not least, I want to turn to Tony Davis to talk about what you know best, I think, Tony, which is the military security situation. Maybe you could do a test and just... Test, yes, I think so. But could you... Yes, but could you turn it closer to you, and talk straight into the microphone. Tony Davis from
Thank
James.
you, Gwen, and thanks for inviting me. I'm going to find it really difficult to... Further closer? Okay, good. I'm going to find it really difficult to match the passion and enthusiasm that you've just heard from all of the speakers from Myanmar. What I'd like to do in the coming 5 or 10 minutes, 10 at the most, hopefully around 5 or 6, is to make a few very general points, essentially from 30,000 feet, as it were, looking at the broad contours of the conflict in the country and perhaps where they might be going in the coming few months. I want to start with a baseline analysis, my own baseline analysis, which has emerged from being involved or as an analyst being sucked into this conflict for the past year. It's taken up a lot of my working time. So this isn't just thoughts off the cuff, but I'm going to keep it as a baseline analysis. And that baseline analysis is that the SAC already is presiding over a failed state. There's a lot of talk about, will Myanmar become a failed state? My baseline analysis is Myanmar is already a failed state. And the SAC is not going to be able to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. It's not going to happen. On 2 levels. One is the administrative level, the structure of administration in the state. For the best part of the year, started obviously in March, April, and then has gathered pace since then, we've seen administration under attack in virtually every city in the country, every town, every city, and increasingly in rural areas. So the administrative structure is already broken, it's gone. But I think much more important than that, that could be put back together again if you like, But much more important than that is something that Min Zin mentioned in his presentation, and I believe he's right on the mark. And this is the fact that the SAC has no political credibility or legitimacy. That is something which the Tatmadaw, as Min Zin pointed out, and I'm just going to briefly recap, in earlier decades of Myanmar's post-independence history, the Tatmadaw has probably never been a popular force, but it has always had a degree of legitimacy and certainly of centrality. It's been central to the state in Burma, both in terms of the perception of the people of the country and also in terms of the international community. That legitimacy has now gone. And what that leaves the country with, in terms of the Tatmadaw, is simply the best organized, most heavily armed, and unquestionably most ruthless bunch of armed men in the country. And there's plenty of armed men in Myanmar. The Tatmadaw is simply another group of armed men. And as Shun Lei pointed out, what that means is we shouldn't look at them as stakeholders. They are effectively perpetrators. And we need to understand that both as an objective fact, but also, as importantly, in terms of the perception of the overwhelming majority of the Burmese people. Now, this presents a huge problem for diplomacy, which is supposed to save the day, right? And we can already see this. Diplomacy, the ASEAN 5-point consensus around which both Myanmar's neighbors and also the international community more generally have sort of gathered in desperation because really there's nothing else. This consensus is predicated on the idea of bringing the Tatmadaw into a process supposed to solve the problem that they have created. And I don't know how this circle is going to be squared, because there's hundreds of thousands, millions of people, many of them young, of the generation we've just heard, who will not accept that. So diplomats in Beijing, in New Delhi, in Bangkok, in London, in Paris, in Washington, can imagine that the Tatmadaw is part of the solution. The problem is, it's been overtaken by events. They're not part of the solution. They are a fundamental basis of the problem. That's the Tatmadaw in my assessment. I'd like to move on to the PDFs. And obviously the PDFs have been one of the most striking phenomena that we've seen over the last year, because unlike the Tatmadaw and ethnic armed organizations, or what are they now called? Ethnic resistance organizations, the PDFs are new. And in his presentation, Min Zin made a very interesting point, which is that they are gaining ground. And to a degree, I agree with him, and to a degree, I don't. They have gained ground in some areas, and in other areas, on a range of issues, they are arguably treading water. Now, the PDFs have two critical problems. There are two things that they are critically short of. One is guns, and the other is strategy. And what is interesting about guns and strategy is they relate to each other in a symbiotic, mutually reinforcing relationship in a good scenario for an insurgent. If you have guns and a supply of guns and more guns, that means you are almost certainly going to have tactical successes. And if you have tactical successes, you have to begin to think in a strategic context. You're no longer just in your village or in your township, you're in a region and in a country. And that makes you strategic. And by the same token, or inversely, if you have strategy, that makes you think about military operations. How are you going to use this strategy? What is the plan for the next 6 months, for the next 1 year? Where are we going? What are we doing in our area? How does it relate to another area? So a strategic understanding results in military operations, which then, surprise, surprise, bring in more success, and that means more guns. So in an ideal scenario, these two elements, which the PDFs today are critically short of, reinforce each other. Now, it's going to be really difficult. It already has been very difficult for the PDFs to get guns. We know that, we hear that, we read that, we see that. There's not a lot that the NUG can do to solve that problem, simply because the NUG hasn't been recognized by any external power, and no external power, for all their talk about democracy and freedom and atrocities and this, that, and the other, there is no external power, no Western power certainly, that is going to be willing at this stage in the conflict to provide a supply, even under covert circumstances, of weaponry. That's not going to change for the coming while. However, I believe that the NUG does have a critical role to play in providing strategy. That means providing a context in which the military operations of PDFs in central Myanmar can move forward. It gives them shape, it gives them direction, it allows them to progress. And that's not something they're going to dream up on their own, because they're worried this morning about getting bombed in the afternoon. And do they have enough guns to stop the Tatmadaw column that's coming at them? So it's highly unlikely that strategy is going to emerge from PDFs in the field. However, it may emerge from the NUG. Now, I use the word may advisedly because it's not, I don't think any of us, certainly speaking for myself, I don't have much visibility on what the NUG is doing as a military. They have a defense ministry. We know who the defense minister is. They're doing things, but what I'm not seeing yet, this could change in the coming months, but what I'm not seeing yet is the development of the strategy that is going to allow this struggle to move forward. And my concern is that one of the reasons for this is that the conflict in central Myanmar, the heart of the country, the heartland, is not being played out in a vacuum. It is taking place in a country where, since independence, the periphery has been dominated by ethnic minorities, and many of those ethnic minorities are armed. Now, what that means in terms of today is that the main beneficiary of the last year of struggle, has been really bad for the Burmese people, first and foremost, the Burma. It's been seriously bad for the Tatmadaw, for the reasons we've heard already this evening, but it's actually been pretty good for EAOs, or ethnic resistance organ, let's call them EROs. It's been very good for EROs. And if you look at where these groups are placed, you look in the north, you have the Kachin Independence Army. You look on the western seaboard, you've got the Arakan Army. You look in the northeast, you've got the United Wa State Army. What you're seeing is the emergence over the last year, very clear, of seriously powerful ethnic power blocks. And that means that the struggle unfolding in the center of the country is taking place not in a vacuum, but in the context of groups around the periphery which are getting bigger, getting stronger, and becoming more influential. And we can see this very clearly on the ground. So, for example, if you look at Sagaing, we've heard a lot about Sagaing. It's a center of resistance. A lot of fighting has been going down there, a lot of airstrikes. Why? Because the KIA is moving south and providing PDFs along its state border with Sagaing, providing PDFs, Burma PDFs, with weapons, with ideas, with tactics, and with their own soldiers in some cases. And that is not happening in isolation. It's the most clear-cut element of what I'm talking about, but you can see the same dynamic happening in Arakan and very clearly in Shan State, where the United Wa State Army is not, as is often the case, it's often suggested that the Wa State Army is sitting behind its high walls on the border with China and remaining neutral. Not so. The Wa State Army is on the move in Shan State. And before long, that's going to be impacting on areas of central Myanmar next to Shan State. So the problem for the NUG, coming back to the NUG and strategy, is does the NUG run the risk of being overshadowed by newly powerful ethnic resistance organizations? And that is a huge issue, because at the end of the day, it's not about, I don't want to sound cynical here, but I mean, it's not about the beautiful federal democracy on the hill. This is about raw power, right? And the ethnic resistance organizations now have power they've never had before. Why? Because the center of the country is imploding, right? And they're not sitting on their hands. So you have a power dynamic in play where, certainly in the case of the Kachin, and possibly in the and also the Wa, they will help PDFs, they will help Burma insofar as it is in their interest to do so. They've been oppressed by the Burma for a very long time. And that mentality, that sense hasn't just disappeared. They still feel that. So they're going to be very careful, very strategic with the manner in which they play into, if you like, the conflict in central Myanmar. So finally, to turn to where this might be going, what I see, and this relates to what Min Zin said very articulately earlier, and I'll just sort of sum it up. What I'm seeing in central Myanmar, certainly over the coming dry season, right? We're already in the dry season. This is going to go on until the rains in May. What we're looking at is not a stalemate. Stalemate, journalists love the word stalemate because it means they don't have to think about it too much, right? But what I see is a very fluid, dynamic situation, but it is, in essence, in my opinion, it's a balance of chaos. And what I mean by that is that in the conflict zone in central Myanmar, the PDFs clearly are not well enough organized or armed to take down the Tatmadaw. That's obvious. The Tatmadaw equally is heavily armed, very ruthless, and we're going to see much more of that in the coming months, I hate to say, but that's the reality. But they simply don't have the manpower and the resources to crush PDFs in the coming few months, which is essentially what the strategic goal is. I mean, I believe that what they're looking to do is to crush the PDFs in central Myanmar and then say to the international community, okay, problem solved, we're the guys to talk to now. That's going to be the objective. And there are going to be a lot of airstrikes, a lot of artillery strikes, a lot of dead people as they try and realize that goal between now and May. And I don't believe they have a snowball's chance in hell of actually realizing it, but that's the objective. So I'll leave it there.
Tony, thank you very much for a very powerful and well-observed comment. Now, we've actually pretty well run out of time. I don't want to run Ray over time, but we've still got our 5 panelists, 2 here and 3 on the screen there lurking behind the logo. And so I'm really sorry, everyone. I don't think we can have time for questions, although I would like to put one question to each of the panelists and give you 1 or 2 minutes at the most to ask you really overall, looking at the whole thing, what is your definition of victory and your time frame that you would foresee in terms of victory being like a complete? Would you see victory as bringing the Tatmadaw to the negotiating table, or like completely militarily defeating them? What's the kind of time frame? These are just a few ideas, but if you could keep your answers to 1 to 2 minutes, I think that would be a really good way to bring it back to the original idea of tonight, which is what is the expectation for the next year, 1 year on. So Norsa, so you're nodding very knowingly, so or enthusiastically, so maybe I could kick off with you.
Okay, thank you so much. Actually, I forgot to say what next. Actually, I have prepared the part. So the victory for me, so the one that we want to achieve and change to reach. This is that we go through till we reach the victory. So this is the briefly definition of it. So what's the next for us? My colleague Cholet and also some other have mentioned a lot. So I have two targets for the international community and for the domestic, especially in the national actor. So for the national actor, so the strength, the stand against the juntas must be strength and keep our resistance movement, keep going our resistance movement, and also mobilize the people who are not standing against the junta, and also large local consumer campaign, and people are encouraged not to pay their bill to avoid military junta first, because this is really important that people who are participate in this campaign. So, and also really affect our resistance movement. So, and that through my experience and also overview of the political platform and also other struggle. So the political strategy and armed struggle strategy and the public moral strategy, all those have to be harmonized to resist it. So right. This is really important to consider how, and also the international community also, how they're going to pressure the same time that we are pushing in the political strategy and armed struggle and other public movements as well as, and also the trust building and the recognition is really important for this struggle and this resistance, as well as the between ethnic nationality and between different diverse. We need the trust building and we need to have understanding and unity and solidarity for these times. And also the recognition of the generations and women's, any other diverse group also is really important to do and to start. If you are not doing it in the past, you should start and do it now. And that political will, as Shula mentioned, it's really important in this political process and also in the resistance movement, as well as we would like to reach our common goal. And that transparency, responsibility, accountability also is really important from each of actor and each of people that who are participating in the resistance movement. And that for the international community, so we have already mentioned basically for fight, it's really important in the next or in the few years. So targeted section, it's really effective and it's really a way that international community do it, and they have done a lot already. So we want them to keep going and do it. And also supporting humanitarian aid and cross-border aid for the IDP also, it's really important for our struggle and also our resistance movement. And that, as we have been advocate to refer the perpetrator, which is from the military Hotam, to the ICC, and also any other international court from the UN mechanism, any international mechanism. Also, it needs keep going and strengthen mode of our advocacy and our action.
Right.
And that support CDM one. The one is very important in our current resistance movement, because we never ever sees the kind of the actor that evolve and keep their commitment till today. So we want international community support and their solidarity for the protesters and also for the CDMs, and we include women human rights defenders to support of them. So Ambago also is really important to keep going. So we all thanks some international community have their solidarity and support already. So we want them to keep going. So this is what we are think for the next to reach and to end the military dictatorship. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Norsa. So I think that's going to keep you very busy over the next year, but we hope you reach it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And Thinza, over to you. Shunlei.
I agree with Nosase as well with what she's saying. And as I have clearly stated, our biggest demand is justice and accountability. So when we can hold the perpetrator accountable, this will be the victory for all of us, for all the oppressed community. Before we move on to another round of political sphere or another round of different new nation building processes, where is justice and accountability for all the oppressed community? That's the biggest question of our generation. We'll keep asking that. And we will listen to the military leaders and the junta leader and the generals in the court at the UN Criminal Court. Right. So actually, urge all the international actors to join in all the efforts for justice and accountability for Myanmar.
And the time frame that you have hopes for in terms of any kind of form of victory?
I would say as soon as possible. Now the international jurisdiction cases keep running and keep rolling up. In other different countries, I will encourage to open and find a case against the military generals and the perpetrator in Myanmar. So this should happen within 5 years.
Right. No, I'm talking about what you would envisage as victory. There's a whole range of views. I meant in terms of the time frame that you have hopes for actually some sort of victory.
That's the victory of the revolution,
5
holding
years.
accountable.
Okay.
I also agree with what Nosase was saying. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. And Minzin. Over to you.
I think it's quite important to understand and learn, what the resistance movement, their goal, their principle, and how they mobilize their resource, and how they energized and motivated to keep going on fighting, right? I mean, this is more inward focused strategy you need to build. I think this is a very important part of the equation, but alone is not enough. You need to understand what your opponent's game plan, what their preferences, what their capabilities, what their alliance, right? So all these, not only your opponents, but also, like EAOs in the North, the UWSA, KIA, Arkan Army, what their preferences, all these things need to be factored in. And also it's very important to understand neighboring countries' interests and the role, even as a spoiler role, they can play. So you really need to figure out not only inward focused strategy, but also outward focused strategy. And then when you have this interaction, integrated approach, then you will have more forward-looking. In this case, I would say that optimism, you will realize, it's based on what you can do, not based on what external factors can do. I think if we are realistic, at the same time guided by the principle and values, and then we will win. Right now, we are very good at two things. One, we have new actors, new players, new generations. This is so powerful. They are passionate. They are so determined to go ahead. Right? So this is a good thing, new actors. Second thing, we have seen unprecedented in terms of norms and values. People come together, right? Willing to go beyond their parochial, ethnic, religious, regional. They go beyond that parochial silos. So this is the first time for Myanmar politics. If we get it right, we can get more inclusive identity building. So the way that I see NUCC is not in terms of ethnic EAO's platform, because I doubt that's likelihood, but in terms of intergenerational platform. Young people across gender, they come out with the value, passion, commitment. I think this is two important things. Actors and norms are a very good, foundation for all of us to how to incorporate our identification, appreciation of the outward players. So I think it's a lot of prospect, but at the same time, you really need to unpack a lot of things. You can go with the ambiguity and vagueness, but you really need to be laser sharp in your analysis and identify all these possible strategical strength you have. Thank you.
It's an incredibly thoughtful answer. Thank you. And finally, I think we've lost Sotoni. Sotoni, are you there? No. Yeah, I think he's... Oh, there he is. Sotoni, do you have a final word very quickly on your vision, your hope, your estimate of how long, what the definition of victory is, how long you would think it would take?
Yes. Thank you very much for it. Yes, our strong demand is the Burmese military must withdraw from politics. This is our chairman sent out the letter to Min Aung Hlaing on 22nd March 2021. So this we state firmly on this, and then we will to be able to get this point. We will do whatever we can that every possible ways on politically, diplomacy, economically, and military. So that we are in the front lines, and then we work together with all the peoples, all the organizations, and then we can say that we are from the offenses at every level of this stage, but only defensive from the military weight. But this year, we have decided we will turn to offensives in the military ways. This is the thing that we want to say that. And then the second thing is now we're facing a big problem with our IEPs. So we really need to have their protections. So we want to say to the international community, if you don't have anything that's possible way for giving us the anti-aircraft, but please be sure that thinking and considering very well about the protection of our people, like we demand for the safe zone, something like that. So very important for us. We don't deny for the political dialogue. We don't deny for the negotiation. But at this time, the negotiation, as we have a very big experience in the past, this time must be international, must be there together with us, not only signing agreements at the scenes, and then when we have a political dialogue without international community participation, it is nonsense for us. It is we waste time, and then the things that cannot be reached to our goal. So this is if a political dialogue, there will be with there must be with international participation, supervision, something like that. It is very important for us. Otherwise, we can do with this situation because we have a very bad experience with the Burmese military. We don't launch it anymore. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Tony, finally.
I think it's a question for Burmese people, not for foreigners, and you've heard a good answers.
Thank you very much. All right. I think on that very wise note, I'd really like to thank everybody who was involved in this panel. It was an unusual format, and I'm really sorry we didn't really have time. If we had questions now, I think it would add another hour. But I really think our panelists said it all and really went into great detail and outlined their thoughts and hopes. And we might just leave it at that. And we do intend to keep up the Myanmar panels, hopefully at least every few weeks. We've got a few planned in the next 6 weeks, so please keep an eye on the schedule. But meanwhile, the Burma Benefit Spring Film Festival is on from today with a comprehensive lineup that you can see the program online. Check our website and Facebook page, and a session on Thursday night physically in the clubhouse. 3 very short films and a talk by Burmese filmmakers who made one of the key films, and there's a lot of other things, so please check our site. And thank you very much for all of you for joining us tonight. The video will be on our website, our Facebook page as well. So good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bang.
Good night, everybody.